He vanished the night she lost their child. Since that moment, CEO Quang has not been seen or heard from, leaving behind only silence and a devastated fiancée, Linda. As she battles grief and physical exhaustion, thousands of unanswered questions torment her until a dark truth begins to surface. Quang isn't running. He's being held captive, somewhere between life and death. Why was he taken? And who's behind it? Don't miss this gripping and emotional journey of love, loss, and survival. Subscribe now and follow every heartbreaking twist in Linda and Quang's story. Let's begin. Since the day Linda suffered a miscarriage at the hospital, CEO Quang has vanished without a trace. It was as if the moment the devastating news reached his ears, something inside him shattered, and then he disappeared into thin air. No one has heard from him since. His phone, once constantly buzzing with business calls and messages from loved ones, went silent. Texts went unanswered, calls went straight to voicemail, and eventually, the line went completely dead. The man who had once stood tall and unshakable at the helm of a massive business empire had simply gone. What made everything more terrifying was the silence that followed. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing hour, the sense of dread only deepened. His staff tried to cover for him, issuing vague statements to the media about an extended business trip, but behind the closed doors of his office, panic was rising. His personal assistant, once confident and composed, was now frantically reaching out to every contact in Quang's network, searching for the smallest lead. There was none. Even his mother, who knew him better than anyone, couldn't reach him. A woman of calm wisdom and unwavering strength, she had always been his anchor. But now, even she was helpless. She called his number every morning and night, sent messages filled with worry and love, but the silence remained. Her maternal instincts told her something was terribly wrong. Quang wasn't the type of man to run away, especially not from a tragedy. He was a fighter, a protector, especially when it came to the people he loved. At first, some speculated that Quang had simply taken time to cope with the loss in private, that perhaps grief had driven him into solitude. But soon it became clear, this wasn't just grief. This was something else. Something darker. Something far more sinister. There were no signs of him at airports, no transactions on his bank accounts, no activity on social media. His car remained parked in the company garage, untouched. It was as though the earth had opened up and swallowed him whole. The media eventually caught wind of the story, spinning sensational headlines about the missing CEO. Rumors spread like wildfire. Had he run away from his responsibilities? Had he gone into hiding due to financial scandal? Had he left Linda behind on purpose? But those who knew him, truly knew him, dismissed those theories with sorrowful eyes. Quang would never leave Linda, not now, one of his close friends said in a whispered interview. Not after everything they went through together. As the days dragged on, the question loomed larger, Where was Quang? Was he still alive? The uncertainty was unbearable. People searched, authorities got involved, private investigators were hired, but not even a shadow of his whereabouts could be found. The man who had built his legacy with determination and integrity had simply ceased to exist in the eyes of the world. Behind all the chaos, one truth remained unshakable: Quang's disappearance was not by choice. Something had happened. Something beyond grief. And as Linda lay in her hospital bed, weak and broken, she clung to the hope that somewhere, somehow, he was still out there fighting to return to her. What she didn't know was that hope might be the only thing keeping him alive. While the world searched for answers, Linda was slowly fading away. The day she lost her baby was the day her entire world began to collapse. The pain was physical, yes, but it was the emotional devastation that left her shattered. The miscarriage had happened so suddenly, so violently, that her body hadn't even caught up to the trauma. She lay in the sterile hospital bed, surrounded by white walls and sterile lights, staring at the ceiling in numb silence, waiting for Quang to walk through the door. But he never came. At first, she thought he was just late. Then she convinced herself he was overwhelmed by grief and needed time. But hours became days, and days turned into agonizing silence. There were no messages, no calls, no flowers, nothing. Just a growing void where his presence used to be. Linda tried calling him. She tried texting. At first with words filled with worry. Then desperation. Then fear. But all her messages went unread. Her calls went unanswered. Her heart screamed the question she couldn't silence. Why? Why would he disappear like this, without a word? Had he blamed her for the loss? Was he too broken to face her? Or had something happened to him? Those questions haunted her. They echoed in her mind like a cruel chorus she couldn't shut out. Every possible scenario raced through her head 1,000 times a day. Was he angry? Was he hiding something? Had he decided to leave her at the lowest moment of her life? Linda had always been a strong and independent woman with dreams, ambitions, and a fierce will to rise above hardship. But now, she was a shadow of herself. Her once bright eyes were now dulled with sleepless nights and tears. Her body, already weakened by the miscarriage, was wasting away from lack of appetite and overwhelming sorrow. Nurses came and went, urging her to eat, to rest, to heal, but none of them could touch the wound in her soul. She refused to leave the hospital. Some part of her still believed Quang would walk through that door. That he'd come rushing in, eyes swollen with tears, arms open to hold her. That he'd say he was sorry. That he was here now. But that moment never came. Her friends visited, bringing food she never touched and flowers she barely noticed. They spoke softly, cautiously, avoiding the name Quang as if it were a curse. They didn't know what to say. No one did. Because no one knew anything. One night, Linda collapsed while walking back from the bathroom. The doctors said her body was exhausted, dehydrated, malnourished, traumatized. But she knew the real reason. She was running on empty. No hope. No answers. No Quang. Her mother flew in from overseas and sat by her bed, holding her hand, trying to soothe her daughter with quiet prayers and gentle touch. But even she, the strongest woman Linda had ever known, was visibly shaken. She knew loss. But she didn't know how to fight this kind of pain. Each time Linda closed her eyes, she saw Quang's face, heard his voice, felt his hands. "Where are you?" she would whisper into the night. But the silence always answered back. What no one realized, what even Linda couldn't imagine, was that Quang hadn't chosen to leave. He hadn't abandoned her. He wasn't hiding or running away. He was being held somewhere. Against his will. His freedom stolen, his voice silenced, and his love for Linda used against him. And as Linda withered in the quiet hell of heartbreak, the man she loved was alive, but just barely. Far away from the world that mourned his absence, Quang was trapped in a place where time no longer had meaning. He had been taken the night Linda lost their child. One moment, he was racing through rain-slicked streets toward the hospital, heart pounding, panic rising with every red light and ringing phone. The next, everything went black. When he woke up, he was in darkness, cold, bloodied, disoriented. His wrists were bound. The air was damp and smelled of rust and mold. And there were voices, low, unfamiliar, dangerous. His captors didn't speak much. They kept him locked in what looked like an abandoned warehouse, deep in some forgotten industrial district. At first, Quang thought it was a robbery or a ransom scheme. But days passed, and no one came. No demands were made. No threats, no negotiations. Just silence. And isolation. And pain. They fed him just enough to keep him alive. Water was rationed. His injuries, from the initial abduction, went untreated. Time blurred into a series of grim awakenings, confusion, and darkness. But the worst pain wasn't physical. It was not knowing. Not knowing what had happened to Linda. Not knowing if she was alive. Not knowing if she was still waiting for him or if she had given up hope. He thought of her every second. Her voice, her laughter, the way she held his hand when no one was watching. The memory of her crying in his arms when they first found out about the pregnancy, that memory alone gave him the strength to breathe through the agony. But it also tore him apart inside. He didn't know that she had lost the baby until one of the guards muttered it with a cruel smirk, "Too bad about the kid, huh? Shame he never got to see his old man." That moment broke something inside him. His knees buckled, his fists clenched, and he screamed, not from pain, but from a heartbreak too deep to contain. He couldn't protect her. He hadn't been there. And now she was alone, grieving, and probably thinking he had abandoned her. His mind played out 1,000 versions of her face, confused, angry, devastated. What was she thinking? Did she believe he had left because of the miscarriage? Did she believe he didn't love her anymore? The thought was more torturous than anything his captors could inflict. He didn't know who had orchestrated this. A business rival? Someone seeking revenge? A deal gone wrong? The truth remained locked behind shadows. But one thing was clear, this wasn't random. It was calculated. Deliberate. They hadn't killed him yet for a reason. He began marking the days with broken fingernails on the concrete wall. At night, he whispered Linda's name over and over again like a prayer, willing the universe to carry his voice to her. To let her know he was alive. That he was fighting. That he hadn't given up. And somewhere, even in the blackest parts of his captivity, that hope kept him alive. Back in the city, Linda sat by the window of her apartment, pale and silent, a cup of untouched tea growing cold in her hands. She stared at the empty street below, heart heavy with sorrow. "Something isn't right," she whispered. "Quang would never leave me. Not like this." And she was right. Because Quang wasn't lost by choice. He was being held in the shadows, alive, broken, but unyielding. And if there was even the smallest chance of escaping, of returning to her, he would take it. For Linda. For the child they lost. And for the love that refused to die, even in the dark.
Xin chào tất cả các khán giả của kênh Ký tự Ninja Review. Rất vui vì ngày hôm nay lại được gặp lại quý khán giả trong tập phim ngày hôm nay. Tập phim ngày hôm nay thì siêu Quang vẫn đang bị cô âm tích, không ai biết rằng anh còn sống ở trên hay là anh đang ở đâu, vì không có ai có thể liên lạc được với anh. Trong khi đó thì Ninja vẫn trong trạng thái là suy